all week long, Eyewitness News is getting you ready for the Renaissance. Our queen is coming home. Beyonce's world tour is making 2 stops here over the weekend. I got a chance to speak with our Melanie Lawson, who knows Beyonce and the Knowles and has known them since the days of the days of Girls' Time and Destiny's Child. Here's a look back at how she's seen this Houston icon evolve over the decades. Okay, so we are talking the Renaissance, hitting Houston this weekend. It's been a long time coming for those of us who love watching Beyonce, and I know you love watching her as well.
I do, as a matter of fact. I know you've already been to one of her concerts in Vegas. I was very jealous, so I can't wait to see it. She always puts on just a phenomenal show, but as I understand from you and folks like you, this is so over the top.
The first thing I want to ask you, though, Beyonce, as we know her, hasn't always been Beyonce as you know her. So what's your first memory of this little girl from Third Ward?
Well, the funny thing was I went to her mother's beauty shop called Headliners back in the day, and at the time the girls were little. They were probably 9, 10, 11 years old. And I think the first name of the group was Girls' Time. But anyway, she would come in with her 2 co-singers, whatever you want to call them, and her mom would say, listen, the girls want to practice their act. Would you mind? And I'm always sitting there with a cup of coffee in one hand and a newspaper in the other, back in the day when we had newspapers. And I would sort of go, okay, yeah, no, that sounds great. I'm so glad I never said, no, I don't feel like listening to those kids, because even then they were incredibly talented.
I mean, so then we're talking about young kids, 9, 10, 11, like you were saying. Could you see that they had the potential to become Destiny's Child?
I don't think any of us sort of saw that. There were so many groups out there, kids that would like to sing. But they were so smooth, even at a young age. I say a lot has to go to their parents for that. Matthew was their manager at the time, and Tina did everything else. She made their costumes, she did their hair, she did just about everything. So I think they were more polished even as little kids than they were than the average group you might see in church or something.
So fast forward with me to 2005, DC3, Beyonce, Kelly, Michelle, at the top of their fame when it comes to Destiny's Child, but they're also getting well known independently of each other. They decide to go on a world tour, which wound up being their last world tour, Destiny Fulfilled and Loving It, and you decide to meet them in Australia.
Well, it was kind of a last-minute thing. I was good friends with both of her parents, and Matthew, I was doing an interview with him, and he said, yeah, the girls are going on tour. They're going to be in Australia, you know, a week from today or something to that effect. And he said, would you like to go along? Well, of course I'd like to go along, but I didn't know if my bosses would even consider that.
How hard of a sell was it?
It actually was surprisingly easy. Our former general manager said, oh, that's crazy. And then he came back and said, well, let's see if it'll work. So we ended up taking a couple of cameramen from here, a producer and me. And then we flew all the way to Australia, not with them, but on our own. And then when we got there, we ended up kind of chasing them around for a couple of days, not knowing where they were going to be. And then at the very end, the last day or so, we were able to shoot all of this behind the scenes stuff at the concerts in Sydney. And it was really one of the most remarkable things I've ever done in my life.
I want to ask you to reflect on this in a really particular context, because as Beyonce has grown into who she is now, she talks to her fans through her music. She doesn't sit down for one-on-one interviews, and she doesn't give anybody with local news outlets access to her. So when you think about that and the way that you were able to have access to her family, to the group, how do you reflect on it?
Well, it was one of the most exciting things ever, but I had the benefit of having known the family for a while, and I think that's what gave us the entree. But also, I was just so impressed with what good girls they are. And that had a lot to do with their parents, and especially Tina. Tina was the kind of person who would say to Beyonce and to Solange and to the other girls, now listen, I want you to be polite to everybody. I don't care how tired you are. I don't care how big the stadium. You have to make sure you are always the best person you can be. And as a result, there are a whole lot of things that Beyonce does that we never hear about. She likes to do it behind behind the scenes,
Right.
but she has helped out so many, especially women and young girls over the years. And it always reminds me of just what wonderful people her parents are.
And like at St. John's, the church where she was raised, you
Right.
may not be able to catch her on a Sunday morning. That would be insane. But I understand she still keeps a very close relationship with that church and is involved in their philanthropy.
She absolutely is. If you ever drive down the freeway, you may see a sign that says the Knowles Family Center,
That's right.
among other things. That she and Kelly gave a lot of money, I want to say over $1 million, to the church so that they would be able to construct these rooms and really apartments for young women. But they are just, Tina reminded me that when they were little girls, they would go to St. John's. They feed the homeless. That's a major part of their mission. And she said at the time the girls weren't so crazy about that, but that was an important part of their mission every single day. And they've never strayed very far away from that.
When you talk about Houston icons, not a completely unfamiliar idea to you, but what do you think this woman, this artist, this philanthropist means to our city?
Well, I think we're just all so incredibly proud of her and what she's been able to accomplish. The fact that there's been no scandals, that despite the fact that she's one of the biggest stars on the planet,
Right.
she's still just basically a really nice person, a really wonderful person. And again, I always go back to the things that she learned from her family, from her church, and you can see that essence of her even while she, breaks all records on tour. But she's just a really wonderful person.
It is so good to hear that coming from you, somebody who has known this family for so long. You are a friend, you're also a fan. As we stated at the beginning, you're going to be at one of the shows this weekend.
I will.
So what do you want to see on stage?
I just want to see her as she is now. I want to see the stardom, the spectacle, all of the beautiful clothes and wonderful songs and dances. But I also know that she's going to send a shout out to her hometown because she always does. And she's very proud of the fact that she grew up here in Houston and all of the fundamentals that she learned here. So I'm looking forward to seeing both the star and the hometown girl.